Hello, everyone. I hope all is well. I am doing my first live stream, and I must say that I'm happy to be able to do this. As a matter of fact, I thought about doing this for the longest time, and I said to myself, why not now? Because I think we're at a point where we have to think about a few things, and it's just necessary to do that. So let me just put a message here for people joining me, welcoming them to, of course, the session. And I'm just happy that you are able to attend. If you're going to be listening at some point in time, it's important for us to really make connection from time to time. And I say it's so important because as we walk along the line, we find ourselves in positions that sometimes we lose our identity with our culture. So I want to talk about back in the days. And I think it's so important to have that sort of connection with individuals. When we look at what's taking place, we realize there's a movement away from traditional culture, from the games we used to play. I want to say it really fascinates me how things have passed to a point where many individuals have no idea what's going on. And that is why I'm saying at this point in time, I'm just happy that I'm able to share. So I want to say big up to everyone who's going to be listening to this recording, if they're in Jamaica or the diaspora group. It's so important for us to make these connections and drop a chat if you're watching it later or at this point in time, and just let me know what you're thinking about it. But I want to say a big shout out to everyone. A little about the learning journey. The learning journey is about a journey of learning. I'm learning and I'm sharing, and it happened to really start. I started this by thinking about what legacy would I be leaving. It's important for us to think about legacy and to think about how we want to be remembered. Not many people think about that. And I remember talking to someone once and saying to them, I want to leave a legacy. And they couldn't understand. But for me, Jamaicans, they want to leave a name behind. So when I say we're learning together. So that's how it came about. And the need to connect with others, that's so important. Sharing. And when I share, it's just not just talking about something, I'm actually engaging with others. I'm actually researching the topic. So therefore, it's important for us to think about things and just not just read things, but to research. So I want to say thanks for everyone who's going to be watching this. And I want to say that my talk tonight is going to be on Jamaican games. I love games. I love playing games. I love everything about ring games. I love just doing everything as a child. And I realize that there's a move away from that. And if you ask some children today in Jamaica, have you heard about this game? They ask you what you're talking about. Never heard of it, or they laugh because they can't believe that we used to do those sort of things, right? So it's important for us to really think about some of these games that we played. And these games are important, because I want to say that they're disappearing at this point in time from where we used to be. So I want to say that as you think about the legacy, think about how your generation is moving and what legacy you're leaving your children. So I want to say tonight, if you're thinking about games, what sort of games would you choose if you wanted others to learn that you were given the opportunity to grasp over a period of time? And that's important for you to look at. It's important to understand that games have a very good part of the lives of children today. So I want you to think about the first game you remembered playing in Jamaica. Yes, playing in Jamaica or in the Caribbean. And is that game present today? That's so important. It's important to ask yourself what you did as a child. And I think the children today are missing out on a lot of these things, and we need to really remember that it's so important to get them involved in these things, because if they are not going to be engaged in these, then what's the sense? So I want you to think about, if you're listening at some point or another, I want you to think about a game that you played and you loved. For example, there's one particular game, they call it Jacks in Jamaica, where I don't know how the girls were able to pick up and bounce a ball and collect some jacks on the ground and just do that again. It was wonderful. Of course, boys joined in sometimes. It was a wonderful time. And I always remember watching the girls doing it. And sometimes they have double balls, two balls are running at the same time, and they're able to really manage that. It's indeed a wonderful game. But it's always done in the lunchtime. They have it on the ground and they're playing, and it was a wonderful sort of game. But I think one of the biggest games around the schoolyard back in the 70s and 80s was Dandy Shandy. Yes, Dandy Shandy was a big game. Back in those days, yes, they had, of course, they had a box. They would have a box drink and they would stuff it with paper, and then that would become ball. They had to be creative, right? Because they did not have those softball that they could use at that time. And of course, they stuff it, and sometimes they stuff it so hard that if you got hit by it, they call it a soak. They soak you with the ball, man. That means the girl aim or the boy aim, because boys used to play the game too. The boys would aim and give you a big soak. But all that sort of game, it was important. It was important in developing individuals. As a matter of fact, you were learning a lot of things, and I'm going to point that out further down. And of course, you had another game. They call it Stuck in the Mud. Stuck in the Mud was one of the things that if they touched you, you had to remain in that point. And I don't clearly remember that game, but I know that game existed. And I know many people played that game. So if you can remember what it was really, you can drop a line in it and let us know, let the audience know what it was like. Because Stuck in the Mud was a wonderful game. Actually, back in those times, if you got stuck in the mud, after rain, your shoes would actually get stuck in the mud. And these games were wonderful. Another big game that was played was, of course, marbles. Yes, the boys could really do. I don't know how they did it because I had poor hand coordination. You notice I'm saying certain things now, telling you how it's developing the eye and hand. I don't know how they could do it, but they could stay so far off, and they could mark. They would hold that marble and they would accord it a pitch, and they pitch and hit that marble. And obviously, that was a childhood game. They had the ability to do these things, and they played, they entertained. It was a game of strategy, of course. And of course, there was another called stringer kick. No, this one was really a vicious one. Boys would decide to play this, and if the ball went through your legs, as they would say it, and you're playing, they call it a salad, or something in England they call it meg someone, means that the ball went through, and the legs, then they would run after you until you reach the base. You had to reach the base before, or else you'll be kicked all the way to the base. And of course, some people, they know they can't manage the pain, but they still go in the game. And I'm sure at some point they would have banned that game, because when you're talking about that, you're talking about the whole schoolyard running after you before you reach that base, and everyone wants to get a kick on you before you reach that. So these were the games. And of course, what did that build? That built speed. So if someone was very quick and could run to the base, he could do that. And if he was running after you, would surely get a kick. Now, those were the school games that were played back then. If you have any more that you can suggest, you can put it in the chat at this point in time. And of course, you had another game. They had Dolly House games that they played, and that was played in the home. There, there's so many things that were played. So these things were really socializing individuals to develop themselves in another pathway. And of course, they had a police and thief. Yeah, that one was one thing. You either were the police or you were the thief, and they would make not guns make from stick, and they'll go around and they'll shoot. And it was so fascinating when you remember that, because they would say pow pow, him dead, and you had to lay on the ground and pretend as if you're dead. No, there was a controversy, because there was no referee or camera to catch you. Someone would say, I shot you first, the next one would say, I did shot you first, and all of a sudden they had to start over. But what I want to say is that this was a time of engagement. It was a time where children learned to play, they learned to negotiate. They were not sitting around a television and watching. And of course, I want to say that it gave you a lot of thought. Now, and when you went to the high school, the games did not change. People still watched and started to play. For example, money football. There were competitions. And as a matter of fact, I was going to school one day when I realized that everyone was playing money football. And I decided, you know what? I want my game. I was not good, but I thought I would just join the game, money football. And I joined, man, but it was illegal in the school. You should not be playing any money football. And you weren't playing for money. So what you would do is to set up your desk. You had two areas that you call your goal. You had your half line, just like a soccer. I'm not going to say football, a soccer field, and football field in Jamaica, soccer in America. And then you'd use two coins with a little smaller coin to guide that ball to and from to the goal. You had certain techniques that you use. And of course, the boys just love playing. By the time they finish eating, they run and play that game because that was a lunchtime game that you played, but it was illegal in my school. It was not allowed in my school. So one day I was busy playing, and we had a principal, may his soul rest in peace. Wonderful principal by the name of Mr. Winstanley, now deceased, wonderful person. A shout out to him. He's always remembered for his goodness and his love for children. They called him the ninja. Yes, ninja. And for some reason, I heard a quietness around. And when I looked around, lo and behold, it was Mr. Winstanley. He said, Jowallah, you're playing money football, and he had his cane in his hand. And I'm saying, for the first time in my life, I'm going to get caned at this point in time. I started to wonder. I prayed to God, God, forgive me for what I've done, because I didn't want to get a cane that day. It would be embarrassment. It would be a stain on my life forever. And I prayed. He looked at me and he said to me, to be honest, I don't see a part on you to hit, because I was very tiny at the moment, at that time in my life. And he said, you know what? Pick up all the garbage around the classroom. I hurriedly picked up the garbage. Those were the games that people played. They played ring games. Yes, in a night, I remember going into some communities, they were playing ring games and so forth, and you go around and play your games. These were things that created good vibes in the community. Not to mention the Ludi that they played that taught you strategy. And I'm going to go further into explaining some of these games and why we need to ensure that these games are kept alive. Now, that game that I normally played at Dead Yard, I think I got crushed by the finger. You know, go around a Manuel Road, Galangboy, if it were Brockrock Stone, and I was around there, and then at that same yard, I did not pick up that stone too. I was unable to pick up that stone quickly enough, and of course, it was hammered on my fingers. I have never played that game, and of course, there were songs. People enjoyed what they did. They played so many times. And as I go back to Jamaica and I talk to people, I realize that these games have silently disappeared from communities, or they're just trying to bring them back. But we should never leave these games out. Yes, some people say, it had some ties to certain colonial system, but of course there were other games too. There were so many games that we played around. Just imagine, Jamaicans are full of game. You're coming home from school and you have a 3 mile walk. Today, students don't even want to walk. A, I don't know what a chain is, but even half a mile, they want to take a taxi. But when we were coming from school and we had roughly 3 miles, because we walked from out by Herbert Morrison straight into Montego Bay. We took the train line, and that was a beautiful road that we enjoyed working on and walking. And when we reached home, guess what? It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And the thing about it is, we had fun. We had fun because at that point in time, what we did was actually we played. For example, we saw light poles and we would say, who can be the first one to touch that light pole wins. And of course, everyone would run. And of course, they would say, whosoever reached that light post last is an X. And of course, you don't want to be called that, so you're hurrying and you're running. And every time you're trying to do that, life was a game. People enjoyed it, children enjoyed it. But somehow it has disappeared from our system, right? We now have a system where children are glued to their laptops, their smartphones, video games, and of course, dominated it's now dominating the recreation. And we have to understand within a context, and I'm not going to give you a lecture because I have taught early childhood education. I'm not going to go down there. But we have to understand there's a reason why children need to exercise, they need to learn. And these games provided them with a window to do that. Now, when we look at certain things, I want to go back because I think I need to tell you a little thing. Because when we look at, for example, Dandy Shandy, of course, it helped develop physical skills, strategic evasion. You knew how to run and balance your motor skills. So that was important. It was a very essential part of movement. When you look at marbles, you could see that marbles, of course, was hand and eye coordination. It helped them. Spatial awareness, critical thinking. It was a strategy. You could tell these things. And Ludi, you could use it to count. You can use it to do so many things. You know how to create a skill, a strategy to create a barrier. And that barrier would allow for many things to happen. And ring games. Ring games were very important. They help you develop social skills and, of course, musical sense. You were able to sing, coordinate, quick response. And of course, it was a transition of Jamaica's culture back then. You realize that ring games were important. So when we look at everything what's happening, I want to say to you that it's important that we understand that these games have had a part to play in the development of children. It's important. And I want to ask a question as you're listening. Do you think that technology is killing the tradition of what we had as it relates to ring game, or both can coexist? But I want to say that it helped build teamwork, it helped negotiation, it created a cohesion in the community, and of course, it created something that was healthy for children. Now, what do we have? We have children still sitting on their phones, not engaging. And of course, the tradition of our lives is not happening. What we know now will not be passed on because you know what? We have not taken the time. So I think, like the Jamaica Cultural Development is doing and other organizations, it's time to bring back these games because Jamaica has gone to a 2030 sort of technology framework and the Caribbean is moving towards that. It's important that we have a balance where schools introduce these traditional games. Let children know how to sight again, let children know how to skip again, let children know how to really play Ludi, let children know how to play draft, let them understand certain things. Although I went down to Jamaica, I must say there was a set of individuals trying to play draft, and if I wasn't too strong, they would have beaten me. Hat off to my in-laws. Yes, I love that they got board games, snake and ladder, and all that sort of thing. So it's important to have these negotiations taking place because when you have them, it's important people learn from them. And of course, what does it mean if we introduce these games? It means that we're going to be helping the next generation understand why games are important. It's just not that we cannot just be moving towards, let's say, for instance, the phones where we know we can play a domino tournament online with your phone. It's more than that. It's a connection that we need in our society. So I want to invite you to think, ask your parents, or if they're alive, ask them about what it means to have played these games, to have enjoyed these games, because games are important and we need to go back to the dandy shandy, the ring games, the jacks, the flying of the kite. I remember, luckily, I was not successful in that, but I enjoyed going out. I enjoyed going and bird hunting, never caught a bird, but that's all right. It was nice to be outdoors. It was a game. I enjoyed watching other people plan strategies. These were nice times in Jamaica where the playground was lively. Everyone was having fun. And they had this game, I don't know what it was. You'd have someone, you'd a stronger boy would place another person on his back and they would run around and you would have to do the kicking and that sort of stuff. Those were coordinations, activities that people enjoy doing. Fun was happening on the playground. What do we have on the playground happening now? Every time you came back to the classroom after lunch, the teacher would be like, boy, this building is really hot. She didn't want to say that we were all smelling, but that's all right because that was enjoyable. That was the game that we played. We played so many games around, but they have disappeared because of digital devices. And then our children don't know how to talk, how to behave. So I want to say that traditional games were more than just games. They were a cultural connection. They allowed you to have identity, connection with people. You will have your best friend. You want the best friend to be on your side. Not to mention cricket at lunchtime. Bowl for bat. You remember that one? I remember playing bowl for bat one day. And you know what? They had played that one and they went to another one and I was on another guy's side and we were like, I was we're a team, so it's lunchtime and you want to get a quick game in and he put me on my side and his side rather, and we were playing like crazy and it was my time to bat. And he bat and he ran. But I know I couldn't reach there. So when he realized I was still standing when he ran to me, the game of cricket, he was so upset he started to cry how I allowed him to run out. I said, but brother, you are the one that came here. I was safe. I'm not going to go down there and out. He cried. All these games were wonderful at lunchtime. The girls had their set of games they would play. The boys had their set of games they play. The lunchtime was filled with activity. Even at Herbert Morrison, where I went, a co-ed school, it was filled with fun. Everyone was enjoying themselves because you know what? Let me tell you that playtime was wonderful. We never stopped playing. Even PE we played. Again, although we were exercising, it was fun. I remember I wasn't a good footballer, but I enjoyed things. And, you know, I remember one day playing with was seventh grade man, and we were playing a game because we had to do physical education. And you know what? My own friend, we are on the same team, and I was about to kick the ball, and the man pushed me away and kicked me down and pushed me in my chest. A little most have an asthmatic attack, and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe because he had hit me so hard in the chest. And you know what? I was so upset. I said, "Why would you push me away because you want to kick the ball?" But you know what? Years pass by and decades pass by, and we live lovingly same way. And when my mom passed, he was the only one who turned up. Yeah, so what I'm saying is games brought people together. So I want to really bring this to a point, a wrap up, because I want to do some more. But I want to tell you that traditional games are important. They connect you to teaching your children about life, about what it means to negotiate, what it means to come together, what it means to have agility. Because a lot of these people that you see now, they were able to move left and right and dodge that ball so easily. Because going back to the point, we have to consider the importance of making connections to Jamaica's traditional games like Dandy Shandy, Marble, Ludi. These games shaped us, the generations that came before, and they are disappearing. And I want to say that we must make a connection to connect with these individuals. I want to say thanks for joining me for this short session. And, I do look forward to having more because my content is not going to be about politics. It's going to be about history. It's going to be about our social events that connect us to the future, and also about technology and how it shapes our future. And that's why I'm concerned about the context of saying that increased use of technology has reshaped how children are being developed. And we have to understand that we need to engage our children. And I want to say, do not let technology kill our traditions. Rather, they should coexist. At this point, I would say, thanks for joining me. And remember, subscribe to my channel. I appreciate it. Thank you.